like Chaitanya just introduced the session, this is the first of the sessions or the series of sessions on soft skills. And Sanjay and myself, we put together this deck of slides on project management. Okay. Now, the idea behind this particular presentation is that so some of us felt the need, felt or faced certain challenges or difficulties while working on some projects, or we would like to know more about, given this kind of situation, what can we do, or when you are working on multiple projects, what is the best way to manage all the tasks and so on. So these are all certain requirements that our team members had, and wish to know more about how to deal with these kinds of situations. Okay. So in the response to that, Sanjay and myself, we have put together this slide deck based on a certain commonly available generic information, and also we will be sharing wherever possible. We will also be sharing our experience related to that particular topic or that particular context when we were working on certain past projects. Okay. Now, before I actually get started, I would also like to encourage you to just pitch in case you feel you have a relevant experience to share regarding any one particular topic. Please feel free to pitch in and do that. Okay. So let me get started now. So just a brief introduction about project management. I know that for the most part we are involved rather in the execution of the project, and maybe not management per se, but still it is important to know what is project management and why it is important, so that it's we get a high level overview of things and high level overview of how the project should proceed. Okay. So project management essentially is the process of leading the work of a team or an individual to achieve all the project goals within the given constraints. Okay. And when we talk about constraints, we are talking primarily about the scope, time, and the budget. And also one other challenge when it comes to project management is how do you optimally allocate the inputs or the resources to achieve objectives. Now, this is more from a project management standpoint, but this, right, how do you finish or correctly execute and deliver the project deliverables within the scope, time, and the budget. So these are all what concern us the most. Okay. Now,
you guys heard of four-wheel drive?
Yeah.
Four-wheel drive, right?
Yeah.
So how many wheels are used for sort of pushing the vehicle forward in a four-wheel drive? It's not a trick question.
All four tires.
So I think, at least in our case, right? So every one of us in the group, whoever is handling the project, everyone is involved in project management, right? So it's just that it's a different parts of it that every one of us handle, right? But every one of us is involved in the process, and that is how we have been working on all of the projects, isn't it? In terms of how things go. Yeah. Go ahead, Sai.
Yeah. So the primary objective is to complete the project which complies with the client's objectives. Okay. And it is very, very important to clearly establish the client's objective, and these client's objectives or the client's requirements should influence all of the decisions made by other people involved in the project. So for example, let's say we are building one particular dashboard, right? So that should be aligned with the client's objectives. Okay, so this alignment of where we are going to, or towards what goal we are progressing. So what the client has in mind and what we have in mind. So these two should be in sync always. Okay, that is what the second point means. If the objectives are not defined properly, then it will be difficult to take decisions. Not only to take decisions, but also, after you take the decision and come up with some kind of deliverable, if it is not in line with the client's objectives, then you might have to go back to the drawing board, start everything from scratch. There may be a heavy amount of rework involved and everything. Okay, so this is the first step of the project, to clearly define what are the client's objectives, and then ensuring that you and the client are on the same page. Okay. Now, one very important thing, what I would like to talk about here is the fact of identifying value from your customer's perspective. Okay. And the most important thing that we should take note of here is that we should work to deliver what the customers need instead of what they simply ask for. Okay. Why? This is because many times the customer needs are what I call latent. Okay. So latent is not easily visible, kind of hidden or abstract kind of thing. Okay. So when the customer needs are latent, the customer struggles to communicate the needs clearly. It is many times in my experience, not just here at Perceptive, but even before I observe that when a customer comes to us with a requirement of a project, it may be a particular dashboard they're thinking about, or a particular analysis, or a particular set of numbers, or predictive model, whatever it may be, right? In the very first go itself, the communication might not be clear. Okay, and I'll just draw a simple analogy here. It's like when a baby is crying, right, and the baby cannot express what it is exactly that it wants. Okay, and then the person who is taking care of the baby, they will show whether it wants food or milk, or whether it wants to play or whatever it wants, right? So they show it one by one, and once the right thing is shown, then the baby stops crying. Okay. So similarly, many a times in my experience, I observed that the customers don't communicate their needs clearly. So they have something in mind, but they don't communicate it clearly to us. Okay. So in those kinds of situations, it is important to us, it is up to us to identify what lies beneath what is the customer actually saying. Okay, what are their real needs? What is it that they really want to achieve? Okay, and this is where that domain knowledge and all those things are. So, for example, just a while back we were talking about researching on the domain knowledge and updating ourselves, right? So why is it important? Because that is the thing which helps us identify these latent customer needs. Okay, and so in more of a practical sense, this translates to the customer saying, hey, I want this metric to be shown on the dashboard. Okay, but we go one step further and ask ourselves, why is the customer asking for these sets of metrics? For example, the current project that Jagdish and myself are working on, right? So this requirement came up last week, where they said, so they have launched a new kind of a service, and they said they wanted a dashboard which monitors how this service is being used by the customers. Okay, but that is just a latent need. That is just a direct message that the customer has conveyed to us, that saying that they want this particular dashboard. Okay, but what we started thinking once they said this was, why do they need this kind of a dashboard? Okay, what purpose is it going to serve? Then we thought about certain other points of analysis, saying how can we identify that particular target market for which this service might be applicable, and how can we help our customer to market that service to that particular segment of customers, so that the reach of the service and the network of the customer base of our client is expanded. Okay. So that is what I meant when I said a latent need, because our customer did not mention to us directly that, hey, we want to identify the target market and market this new service to all those untapped customers, right? They did not say it, and they will not say it, but it is up to us to identify that there is this need underneath the surface, and try to do something which satisfies that underlying requirement. So this was an experience from a project that I worked on recently. If anyone else has any other points to add from your experience, please feel free to chip in.
There's an illustration that explains the communication stuff that Sai mentioned. It's this tree swing example. You guys have seen it?
Yeah, so we got
so
it.
It's
Yeah.
there,
Okay, cool.
down
Yeah.
the slides.
All right, cool. Yeah.
So Sina, you saw his slides, huh?
No, I
I
haven't.
know.
That example is like very famous. It comes in a lot of memes and stuff.
Came in my
So
project
one
management
quick
course.
thing I would like to just circle back to the the experience that Akhil and Jairaj have had some time ago. When the client actually sent a PPT, okay, saying that, hey, PPT means it's like, oh, this is exactly what we want, more or less, right? So Akhil and Jairaj and I discussed, and we felt that this can be improved quite a bit. So what we did was we went back with an improved version, okay, which was significantly different, right? And the client said, so Akhil, Jairaj, you guys want to share what the client said?
They said that's fantastic, that's what they want, and they demoed the same into their exhibition.
Yeah. So and I remember the words you said she used at the time, which is, this is what I hope you will do.
Right.
Yes?
Yeah.
Akhil, remember that?
Yeah.
She said, I hope this is what you will do. This is what I gave, right? But she expected that we would think through on our own, add value, and give that to her. Obviously, we have to take the time into account. So, for example, she's expecting something very urgently the immediate next day, and we say, oh, we are still working on it, and we want to give you an improved version. That is not going to fly, right? But as long as we take the customer into confidence, we identified that even when they gave hey, this is what I'm looking for, even then the hidden expectation is that we will add more value to it. But in general, let me tell you this, maybe I can ask you guys a question, then you can let us say I'm just thinking of an example, so that you can understand this. So this is from something that we are facing now. So I'll ask you this. Let us say, let's say we want to, so this is a different one. I will slightly change it once again in my mind. So I'm going to go with a completely new one, right? So let us say if you want to build a house, right? You want to build a house, right? So, and you have a piece of land, and you are calling the architect, okay? Someone, essentially you would call someone who knows how to do it, right? So the person comes, right? He or she, and then the person comes, and then now you're talking to her, right? To that person. Now, how should the conversation go in your mind? What are the things you want to say, and what are the things that the person has to say?
So we'll tell what we want to see. They should tell what is feasible in that, possibly, and what kind of problems will be there. If we, for some of the cases, we tell it might not be feasible from a technical standpoint, so they could help with the technical part of it. Or we could tell them a simple requirement, something like, I want this. You think about where you put it, how you put it, what type of model you put. For example, I could tell that I want a pool. So I might, if I tell that, they have to think about what size is feasible, something like that. Where should I put it? All that stuff like that.
Right. So what you're saying is you want what the end objective is, right? What you want that person to figure out is, that person will tell you, you tell me you want me to put 4x4, I'll put it. You want me to put 5x6, I'll put it. Right? You want me to put 10x10, I can put it. Right? The guy says anything is possible. Then what will you tell him?
He has to make that decision for me. I would expect him to have the prior knowledge to make that choice for me.
See, what you expect him or her to say is, see, this is what these are the options you have. These are the pluses and minuses of these things, right? I would probably recommend you to do this because X, Y, Z reasons. right? Based on that, you can make a decision, right? So you are thinking, so the client should, so this is usually how it is. The client says, this is what we are working on, but they are not experts in it at all, right? We are the experts. So we have to handhold the client, give them all that they are, looking for. What are the options? How do we evaluate these options, right? And be able to walk them through and make sure that they go and reach the goal. That is what they're really looking for. That's the hidden thing, really, right? So I think the same thing is coming up in the Tony's, the other example as well that we just discussed, right? The example that we discussed, Jayraj and Akhil, right? So what we discussed was that she gave something, but they expected us to add value, right? And we go take it to the person, and then the person says, okay, I like it, don't like it, whatever, they'll take a call. Okay. So this is something I just wanted to add.
Okay.
Back to Sai. Anyone else wants to add, please?
On. So this is the list of best practices that we have compiled in project management. Sanjay, you want to take it up from here?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sai. Okay, so these are a list of few best practices in project management which I found through my research, reading few articles, and I compiled it up so that we have a set of 9 different best practices. So we'll go through each one of them. We'll talk about some examples and see how you can, for each of these examples, I'll explain what it is and why we need to do it. I think each of us will probably have something relevant to this. I definitely think there are most of these coincide with what we are doing, and so hopefully you can pitch in with whatever what happened in your projects, for example, or what you think we can do. So let me get started with the first point. So can you guys see this? Okay, I'm not able to control. Yeah, got it. Okay, so the first best practice is like for any project, we'll have to establish the project scope and objectives just when we start the project. So the client comes, he tells he wants to see XYZ, and he gives us a basic set of goals. So those project goals we know. Along with those goals, there will be other deliverables also that we have to keep in mind. And all these deliverables, they'll expect in a particular with a particular standard, for example. So for a client who is, for example, giving us a short-term project, he might not expect us to focus on making the formatting or making it look as good as possible. For him, the urgency might be such that he wants to get this done with, and he needs that report to move forward. So we'll have to make sure that we know what standard he's expecting us to deliver that particular project, and we have to make sure that we follow up with it. So when we do have some extra time or the time is not a constraint, we can strive to make it as good as possible, for example. So that time the standard is the highest possible standard we can possibly deliver. But there are projects where the standard the client expects and what we can deliver in that constraint is going to be less, and we have to make sure that we know what that level is. And finally, there are lots of project constraints, as Sai pointed out. It can be time, budget, all of those. And not only that, there can be resource constraints also. So for example, resources as it can be 2 types. It can be software resources, for example. So for example, we have only one machine. I'm giving you an example which might not be true in our case. So we have to do some calculation which requires a particular type of machine. For example, a supercomputer or a computer which has a lot of capabilities, and there's only one in the whole business. So we'll have to have a resource plan to make sure that people are able to get it in the order of priority. So if I have a higher urgency to get that resource done, so to get that project done, I should be able to block off some time for that particular resource. and that is one of the most important things when it comes to resource management. So this is a technical resource. So there can be soft resources or people resources also. For example, in a project, there can be multiple people working on a project, okay? And one person in that project can be working on multiple projects also. So for example, let us take, I think we can take examples within our group. For example, let's take Akhil. So Akhil is pretty good let's assume he's really good at VBA stuff, okay? So if my project has VBA stuff and Akhil is working on something else right now, I should be able to sketch up a plan that makes sure that Akhil is able to seamlessly switch between the two projects he's working on. So this is extremely important because even mechanical resources can be like easily purchased. So now everything is like a cloud, so we can probably increase the number of users or number of licenses we have purchased very easily. But this can't be done to people. So it's really important that we know how to manage people within a particular project, and this also is a very important constraint in each of the projects we work on. Okay, so this is the first best practice. So any thoughts on this?
Just one point I would like to add on the standards of performance, or rather one example that I would like to give. So sometime back, this was in late 2020. We were working for a company in the financial services domain, and we had to build an Excel macro. So Akhil and Swap were working on that project initially, and then Akhil had developed the VBA, the macro, and everything. Okay, and Akhil had put in a lot of efforts to ensure that the time taken by the macro to process that particular file was very, very fast. Okay, and he had put in a lot of effort to ensure that this happens. Okay, and this is what we call as a standard of performance. Okay, and why is this important from a scope standpoint? It is because so there are certain standards of performance which are feasible and some which are not feasible. Okay, so let's say for example that particular file which we were working on, I think it took around Akhil, was that 8 minutes or something, right, for the processing to happen? Hello? Am I audible?
Yeah, I can.
Yes,
Okay, no issues. Yeah, so that file took around 8 minutes to be processed. Okay, and that is an agreeable standard of performance for that particular file. Okay, and this is something that should be established in the project scope itself. So if we give a file which processes stuff at 8 minutes, and if the client is expecting, let's say, to be processed in 3 or 4 minutes, then which is not at all possible, right? Not technically feasible. Now, at the beginning itself, we should agree that to this point that this is the best thing that we can deliver. Please don't, later on, please don't find fault with us in case this is not faster than this, because this is the minimum technically feasible speed at which it can be processed. So this is one example where you set the standard of performance in the scope itself.
Yeah, so I think I explained this point in the previous point itself. So this is creating a resource plan. So as I mentioned, no team has infinite resources. So we should be effective in the way these resources are managed. And just one moment, there's some noise. Yeah. Okay. So where was I? So the resources have to be. No team has an infinite set of resources, so they have to be managed effectively and efficiently. And we should also beforehand try to do this, because when we plan this beforehand, the person or resource which is going to be used by another, so we have to do it on a timely manner so that there's no clashes. So for example, if we need something the next week. It's ideal we do it this week itself. We block it up this week itself, so that when another team member is going to be probably using it, he'll be able to look at it a few days before. For example, he looks at it and he knows it's going to be used that day, so he can't use it that particular time. So he'll plan around it, and there won't be any disruptions from his side also when this is being done. So not only is our project going to be run seamlessly, this will also help all the other projects around us also to run in an efficient manner. Okay. Yeah. So this point is, I think this is something which a lot of us relate to. So client communication. So it's not just what we communicated, but it's also what they actually tell us. So it shouldn't be a one-way street. So if we go on, for example, when we demo a dashboard, for example, so instead of doing it in a stretch, we could possibly do parts of it and ask their feedback on it, or we could possibly give them options for some stuff. For example, one of the filters, we want a wildcard filter, for example, or a drop-down filter. So there could be some things they might not think of unless and until we extract an answer from them. So we should be able to converse with them, and this conversation should be both ways. And that would be helpful not only in the in that particular issue. So this will make sure that they are they're like comfortable with us, and they'll be able to, without thinking a lot, they'll be able to contact us, or they'll feel free to get to us when they face any issue, and this will help us in the long run a lot. So client communication, it's not just that we tell what all we have done, for example, but we have to clearly understand what they want, and we have to make sure that they are comfortable in telling us what they want. So that is really important and necessary also. And many times client communication can be ambiguous. So I think there have been lots of cases where this has happened. So they'll tell one thing, so we'll assume it's one thing and we'll do it. And in the end, they'll tell, no, this is not what I meant. So this ambiguity, it happens a lot of times. And the only way this can be improved is making sure that we have understood what they have told. So for example, even though we have got the gist of what they have told, it's not wrong to double check, for example. So if he tells this and you understood it, just repeat it, for example, and tell, is this what you're expecting? Is this right? Am I understanding the right way? So most of the times, this double check will actually clear out all the problems. So this, a lot of times, I've tried to integrate when we do our calls with SIM nowadays. So so when they give a particular requirement, I make sure that I understood the right way, and they're able to double check it and let me know that this is what we want. Go ahead. So yeah, so that also is really important when it comes to client communication. And again, this is something I think all of us do. So we schedule regular calls, right? So it can be daily, weekly, and this time it depends on the type of work we're doing. So for some projects, it doesn't make sense to meet on a daily basis. So if your project, you're making incremental progress, for example, and if you're going to be telling that just that incremental progress in every daily call, it doesn't make a lot of sense from the client's point of view, because he has to block off some time for this, and he'll have to probably think about what he's going to talk and all of this stuff. So it depends on the type of project you're on. Some projects, they definitely require the daily meetings. I think Sai, Beam, is it like a daily call, or
almost.
It used to be? Yeah, almost, right? So there, I think it makes a lot of sense to do it on a daily basis. But for SIM, we do it bi-weekly. So it depends on the type of project we work, and each project is different. And this, with experience, I think we'll know, or probably even within the project, when a project starts, we usually need a lot of calls. And after the project matures a little bit, that time might come down, and we can take that call even based on the level of maturity a project has, or a level of maturity the project has, we have taken it to, for example. Yeah, and for all of these meetings, for example, if it's a daily meeting, it becomes a little difficult to fix an agenda every day. But for example, bi-weekly meetings or meetings which we do once a week, what we could do is probably let them know prior, so that they have an idea of what we're going to talk. So if you're going to talk about a mock-up, for example, it's good if you let them know that we're going to be talking about this mock-up, and this is the plan of what we are going to talk about on the mock-up. It would be nice if you could probably think about this a little and get so that they come prepared to the call. So if they don't have any idea on what you're going to talk, they'll be doing all the preliminary level of thinking on the call, and they might not be able to get to the really the nitty-gritties and the really important things on the call itself. So when we give them an idea beforehand, I think that helps them come prepared, and it will also help make the meeting also concise and to the point.
And also, just on the last point, right? We might have certain things which we want to clarify from the client on priority. Okay, and if we communicate to them beforehand that this is what you would like to discuss, then as a priority, our questions can get answered. Okay. On the other hand, if we don't do that, so we will have some questions in mind, but the client has something else entirely different. Okay, and they will be focused only on discussing their points, and finally, whatever we wanted to know, those points will not be discussed. So that is one more reason why it is always important to fix the agenda before the meeting. Sanjay, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So this is the example that that Sinha was eager to get on. So you can clearly see, I think most of us would have seen this picture already. So this is something that a lot of LinkedIn people also post, and even Facebook, I think this comes up quite often. So the first picture here tells us what the client, how the client explains it, and the last picture actually shows what he actually wants, and everything in between is some level of misinterpretation or some level of assumptions that it goes on within the project. And in the end, what happens is that almost nothing which is relevant to the client is done, and they're going to be billed at a rate which is exorbitant. So this here, it shows that they're going to be billed for a roller coaster, but what they get delivered in the end is like almost nothing. So Sinha, you want to probably add something on this?
No. So the documentation was awesome.
Yeah. So let me add that the documentation is non-existent in this case. So I'll share this image afterwards if people have not seen it, so that you can go through it and have a good look. So next point is asking for feedback. So this is also something which I think in most of the projects which we handle, we do on a regular basis. So whenever we complete a particular milestone within the project or a particular project, when we wrap it up, it's really important that we ask for the client's feedback and make those corrections, small corrections which they require. It might not look as important to us, but it's something which, for example, they on a daily basis, it adds up. For example, a button, instead of doing something in 3 clicks, if it goes down to 1 click, for example, it might not be that big to us because we might be using it once a month, for example, but they might be using it every day, and those 3 clicks add up over a period of time. So it's important to listen to what they have to say and try to modify or change the project a little bit to make it as convenient as possible. The next point is the ensuring transparency, and some level of this exists when we talk to each other about projects. For example, within the team, making sure that we discuss what we are going to do and who is doing what, so that all of us are on the same page and we don't end up doing the same thing twice. So that might happen if we are not clear in our communication. For example, 2-3 people are working on something and we're dividing it up. There might be some intersection which is there if you don't, if you're not as transparent or as clear in our communication within each other. So that issue can occur. So it's really important that we ensure that the project is extremely transparent and the communication between ourselves is also excellent.
Just to add, right? In the current project that Jagdish and myself are working on, there is one more person who is in the US. Okay, so we regularly have calls just amongst the three of us to ensure that all of us are working on different things, and then there is a synchronization so that there is no repeat work or no overlapping work that any of us is doing. See, at the end of the day, our objective is to make more value to the client, right? So if both of us or three of us are doing the same thing over and over again, then that value is going to be reduced. So that's why we regularly have catch-up calls so many times a week and ensure that everything is going smoothly and that all of us are in sync.
Thanks. Yeah. So the next point is expecting and accommodating some changes. Okay. So this is something that I think once Jagdish told me. So for example, so in SIM, what we are doing was the API for the Google Ads. Okay. So the API for the Google Ads, it was the old version was actually going to expire and the new version was going to come. So the new version was already available, but we were shifting to it, the newer version. So what I was going to do was I was going to extract all the data for a long period of time, just the ones which we required. Okay. So I would have been able to do what was required for the dashboard based on the data I was going to extract. But when I discussed with Jagdish, he pointed out that it's better that we extract, because there's only an incremental level of few more fields which were available totally. Out of 20 fields, for example, I was going to extract 15 and I was going to leave off 5 because it was not needed. But Jagdish pointed out that it's better we extract those 5 also, because in the future the client could ask something which we might not have been extracted, and that process then would have been really hectic. So we might have had to delete that whole table and re-extract this whole thing for all the days. So each day doing it will take a lot of time. So expecting a little bit of we should be able to expect a little bit of change from the client's point of view. So for example, if they ask something and there's something relevant to it, even if we don't do it, then we should be able to accommodate those small changes in our project, and we should work accordingly. But again, this is something which can quickly escalate to a major headache for a lot of people. So small changes together, they might not be feasible at all. So there are a lot of cases like that. So they might want a particular format, for example, or they might want to look at it in a particular way. That might be easy in some other software, for example, but in this software it's not at all possible. So we should be able to know when it's going to become a major headache, and probably communicate to the client that this is going to all add up and it's going to be a major process. So please let us know if you want to go ahead with this, or are you okay with this situation? So both sides of the coins are there. So we'll have to try to see when we can accommodate changes and when we have to stand up to those changes also.
On the second point, right, I would like to add something. So the scope creep, Akhil and I, we had a very bad experience with this about a year back. Okay. And so what happened was, in every meeting, so we used to have the regular weekly meetings with the client. Okay. And in every meeting, the client used to come up with a lot of modifications and just slight modifications. Okay, some of them might have been a bit big, but the majority of them are small modifications. Okay, but in every meeting, she used to bring up so many different modifications. Okay, and it was very hard for us at that point of time to distinguish those modifications between what was part of the original scope and what was not part of the original scope. Okay, so we also were not aware of this scope creep kind of a thing, and we did not distinguish between what was actually as part of the original scope and what was not. Okay, and at the end of the day, we ended up doing all the changes for the client. Okay, and then we thought of taking a step back, seeing that the project has been going on for a very long time. We thought of taking a step back, and then we looked at it, and then we found out that so many of the changes, though very small changes, so many of the changes that the client had asked for were not part of the original scope at all. Okay, so this is what we call as a scope creep. No, it's not a scope jump or a scope explosion. That's why they call it a scope creep, because these changes are very, very small and they just accumulate in tiny portions over a long period of time. And that is what happened in that particular project. And finally, we ended up billing the client additional amount of money. And basically, they won't they agreed that there was someone in the organization who was responsible for this thing, but then at the end of the day, nobody likes to pay extra amount of money, right? But that was what happened. So as consultants or as service providers, we need to be aware of the scope creep, and whenever you get a change request, it is always important to compare it with the original scope and see whether it is a part of the original scope or not, and only then proceed with it.
Yeah. Okay. So the next point is like making sure that we properly document all these steps of a particular project, for example. So this will not only help us like inform the client or keep the client in the loop or give them this documentation for their maintenance of the project, but this will also help the smooth when a particular team member is going off a project and someone else is going to join it. Okay, so this will help the client, not the client, the team member be get back up to speed pretty easily. So he might be able to look at all the major changes or major steps of this dashboard build, for example, and he can quickly get up to speed and seamlessly continue the project. So while documentation is really important, a lot of people what they do is they document all the stuff, even though these stuff are like very minor and not so important. They it's like an OCD, so they document every single step. So and all the steps, no, it might not be that important, and in the end, for a single dashboard, there could be 12 pages of documentation. And out of these 12 pages, all I need is one page. So no one is going to be reading through those 12 pages to find out that one page of data that they need. So it's really important that we know what to document and what not to. So while documenting, this is also something that we have to keep in mind. Yeah. So when we set all these different milestones for the milestones or deadlines for a project, it's really important that we have a time estimate of how much time it's going to take for us to do this. So if you think something is going to take 7 days, it's okay. It's okay if the client wants it to get it done in 6 days or 5 days. You could probably squeeze it in. You could probably bring someone else into the project, and they could also do some part of the work. But it doesn't make sense to cut the time down to half, for example. If the client wants it in 3 days, it might not be technically feasible at all to do it in 3 days. So these unrealistic milestones, it might be the client might want to hear you say yes at that particular time. But when you say yes at that particular time and you're not able to deliver it, and that no, that the second time no, it's going to be much worse than the initial no. So if you're told no in the beginning, he would have been okay. But after you told yes and you spent so much time, you also would have put a lot of effort, and the client also would have gotten ready to get that delivered that time. So he might have set up things after that, and that it will create a lot of problems. And it's really important that we are able to realize our own limits and let the client know that what is feasible and what is not, and make sure that we are in the same page on that time frame, for example.
One key point when it comes to customer satisfaction, what people always talk about is, you might have heard this saying, okay? So they say that under promise and over deliver. You say that you will give it in 5 days, but you actually, you have estimated that it will take around 5 days to complete. You say that you'll give it in 5 days, okay? But then you can give it, if you give it within 3 days itself, then that leads to an extra amount of client satisfaction. So whenever you're making that promise, just be careful with it. This is what Sanjay was talking about. Don't agree on deadlines that are almost impossible to achieve.
So the final point when it comes to best practices is reviewing and reflecting on the performance after a particular project is done. So this will not only help us do the next project really well, but it will also help us identify places where we are lacking in training, for example. And between projects, we could probably ensure that we are up to date on that particular skill. And this might help both the team member and the organization as a whole also. So that whenever the next project comes, he's able to, he doesn't have that shortcoming that time. So he's able to do his job better than last time, and this will help the whole organization. Yeah. So that was the last best practice.
Okay. Thanks, Sanjay. I know we are a bit over time. Let me just try to wrap it up quickly within the next 10 minutes. This is another important point which I believe is relevant for us. Okay. How do you manage your time when working on multiple projects? Okay. The first point here is that you prioritize as per the company's needs. Okay. Let's say you're working on 2 projects, and so these 2 projects will have different kind of requirements and then different kind of deadlines. Okay. So you assess the situation, okay, and you take a call on what is the higher priority for the company. Okay. And of course, there are people who are available to guide you in this regard. So we can tell you whether this project has to be prioritized over another project. A lot of people, what we do is one project will be working full time, the other project will be working part time, right? So depending on how you are built for that project, so have those considerations in mind, and then you decide the priority when you are working on multiple projects. Okay. And from my personal experience, when you are working in a particular project, right, try to focus on the low-hanging fruits first. That is, try to focus on those tasks, try to complete those tasks which are the easiest. Okay. So once you complete all of the easiest tasks, the first thing that happens is this will give you the satisfaction of achievement. Okay. And that in itself serves as a motivation for you to work harder and faster. Hello? Sorry. So once you complete those easy tasks and get them out of the way, that will itself give you a motivation for you to work harder and faster. So that's what I meant when I said work on low-hanging fruits first. Okay. And in case you are stuck on something, a particular algorithm that does not work, or a particular calculated field for which the logic is not clear, okay, always switch the project and then come back to the other project with a fresh mind, so that the solution comes to you a bit clearly. It is not just in this project management kind of scenario, but for a lot of the problems in life, you see, you will be dealing with one particular problem for a long time, and then if you just take some time out and then think about something else and then come back to the original problem, you will see the solution quite clearly. And in case there are several minor things to be done across so many projects, the best practice here is to use a to-do list or sticky notes to ensure that we do not miss anything. Okay, because multiple clients, each client will have a set of requirements to complete before that particular call. Okay, so make sure that you make a list, and always keep all the clients on the same page. Let's say, for example, there is a holiday or you are on leave or whatever it may be. Ensure that all the clients are informed of the status. Or for example, if there is any blocker, right? If there is any technical issues for which we might not be responsible, but let's say, for example, the server is down at the client's end, right? So they should be informed of this as soon as possible. Okay? And in case you feel any challenges or difficulties, there are so many of us who are available to help you. So please do not hesitate to ask for help. Okay. And set goals for each day, and as much as possible, try to have them completed by the end of the day, so that because once the tasks spill over to the next day, you will have to juggle with the additional tasks that come on the same day, and this might be a bit challenging. Okay, so as far as possible, set the goals for each day and try to complete them in the same day itself, and ensure that there is no spillover of tasks. So next point on estimating the time for the projects, the best way to do this is to do it based on previous experience of working in a similar project. Okay, and one important thing to make note of here is split the project into different parts and estimate the time for each part. Let's say, for example, you're building a dashboard, right? Or you want to deliver Tableau workbook, which might have many tabs. Okay, so it might be difficult for you. Okay, so this is the kind of workbook that the customer wants. How much time is it going to take me to build this thing? Rather than approaching it that way, you see how many tabs or dashboards you're going to build, and each tab, what kind of features does it have? What kind of visualizations does it have? Does the filter logic, is it straightforward, or does it have any complications? How about any other calculator skills that I'm required to create? So you consider all of these things for each and every tab, and then based on those individual characteristics of that particular tab, you estimate the time, and then you estimate the time for the total project. Okay, and always have some kind of a buffer to ensure that you do not work in a hurried manner. That's also very important, because see, not everything in life goes according to plan, right? So always have that additional buffer in mind. Okay, and allocate time to thoroughly check all aspects of the work. So any numbers that you're trying to publish to the client, double check them. If there are any SQL queries running at the background, ensure that that logic and everything is correct. You're pulling the data from the right tables, the joins are correct, and so on. So so when you're making the estimate and when you're making a promise to the client, this is also one additional point to be considered. And you should, so this is one critical thing which we might not readily think of doing. Okay, we should anticipate what part might need rework. Okay, and again, from personal experience, the Excel macro functionality, when it is a little bit complicated, this is something that requires a lot of rework. Okay, so now again, Akhil and myself, whenever we were working on the Excel kind of project, we added this component into the time estimate as well. So this is the kind of macro that we are developing. Accordingly, we will have the buffer. Okay, and in case you're taking over the project from someone else, consider enough time to get KT on the project. Okay, so this KT time, you should have it when you make the estimate for the client, but you should not charge the client for this time. Okay, because it's not their responsibility that you have to spend additional time to learn about the project, right? So you will not charge the client for this time, but please do not forget to make the promise accordingly by considering the KT time. So yeah, scope creep we have already discussed, and in case you face this problem where the client is coming up with so many requirements which are not part of the scope, you talk to the client first and explain to them that the situation, this is not part of what we agreed upon at first. So this is going to cost you these many extra amount of money. So please give your approval, only then we will take up the work. So that is the best thing to do when you are faced with a scope creep kind of a situation. So one final concluding note here, continuous improvement is always something that we should have in mind. So in Japanese, this is called as kaizen. Okay, so whatever we do, right, the system that we create or the deliverables that we give, it's not a static thing. Okay, times change, the business environment changes, the way of doing business changes. So all of these things require us to keep updating our work constantly. Okay, and always have in mind that there is room for improvement. Okay, and we need to be alert to recognize and identify that opportunity for improvement. Okay, so perfection is not something that you get overnight. It is an ongoing effort. So we have to put the efforts continuously to ensure that whatever deliverable we give to the client is of top-notch quality, and also it is as per the changing needs of the client, and thereby helping you achieve the final client satisfaction. So yeah, that is what Sanjay and myself had on the project management. I hope we were able, between the both of us, I hope we were able to answer the questions that you might have had regarding how to deal with the nuances of working with projects, be it multiple projects or dealing with clients, or communication aspect of it, or adding value, whatever it may be. But yeah, in case we have missed anything, or in case you feel there are certain additional things that you would like us to cover, please let us know. We can do that accordingly. So any questions or any other points does anyone wish to add? Okay.